He only meant to rent her the guest room. Unexpectedly, she gave the house a heart again. Lucy Harper stood at the end of a long stone walkway, one hand gripping the handle of an old Navy suitcase, the other holding her phone beneath her chin to keep it dry. It was 8:20 p.m., and the rain was coming down like the sky had finally lost patience. The house in front of her was enormous. Not warm enormous, not the kind of house with porch lights and flower pots and the smell of cookies drifting through the windows. It was the kind of enormous that looked as if it had been waiting years for someone to apologize. Only one light glowed upstairs. Lucy looked down at the rental address again. "Okay," she whispered. "Definitely not haunted. Probably." She dragged her suitcase up the steps, rang the bell, and waited. A moment later, the door opened. The man standing there was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed like he had walked out of a boardroom 10 minutes ago. White shirt, dark trousers, expression carved from stone. He did not smile. He looked at her suitcase, then at her soaked hair, then back at her face. "I have 3 rules," he said. Lucy blinked. "Nice to meet you too. No noise," he continued. "No pets. And—" he paused, as if the last rule mattered most. "Do not try to be friends with me." Rain dripped from the end of Lucy's nose. She glanced past him into the dark, beautiful house. Then she looked back at him and smiled. "I think," she said, "that last one is going to be the hardest." Owen Brooks did not laugh. Lucy would later learn that Owen was 30 years old, the CEO of Brooks & Hale Interiors, and the kind of man whose furniture company designed homes that looked alive while his own house looked like it had forgotten how to breathe. Owen would learn, almost immediately, that Lucy Harper was 26, a freelance illustrator, recently evicted because her landlord had sold the building, and apparently incapable of entering a room without leaving evidence behind. That evidence arrived 3 minutes after she stepped inside. Her suitcase wheel caught on the rug. Her tote bag slipped from her shoulder. A metal tin popped open, and colored pencils rolled across Owen's perfectly polished floor in every direction. Red under the console table, blue near his shoe, yellow spinning all the way toward the staircase. Lucy froze. Owen stared. The silence was so complete that even the rain seemed embarrassed. Lucy slowly lifted one finger. "I have a gift," she said. Owen's eyebrow moved slightly. "For turning any place into a rainbow." Still nothing. "Okay," she whispered. "Tough room." She crouched quickly, gathering pencils as fast as she could, while Owen stood there like a disappointed museum guard. When she reached for the yellow pencil by his shoe, he bent down at the same time. Their hands nearly touched. Lucy pulled back too quickly and bumped her head against the edge of the table. "Ow. Great. First impression complete." Owen picked up the pencil and handed it to her. "You can use the guest room upstairs. Kitchen is available from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Laundry room is through the back hall. Please keep shared spaces exactly as you found them." "Exactly?" Lucy asked. "Yes." She looked at the immaculate entryway. The umbrella stand was perfectly centered. The framed art was perfectly aligned. Even the throw blanket on the nearby chair looked folded by someone with military training. Lucy nodded solemnly. "So if I find a room emotionally unavailable, I should leave it that way?" Owen opened his mouth, then closed it. He took her suitcase without asking and carried it upstairs. Over the next hour, Lucy discovered 3 things. First, Owen had a place for everything. Second, she had a talent for putting everything somewhere else. Third, the house was painfully quiet. There was no television murmuring from another room, no radio in the kitchen, no scent of dinner, no old family laughter trapped in the walls. Only the steady ticking of a clock somewhere downstairs. And the rain. Lucy tried to be respectful. Truly, she did. But by 10 o'clock she had already placed her mug on the wrong side of the sink, hung her keys on the wrong hook, and folded a hand towel in a way that apparently insulted the entire architectural integrity of the bathroom. Each time, Owen quietly fixed it behind her. She noticed, he noticed, that she noticed. Neither of them said anything. Before bed, Lucy wandered downstairs for a glass of water and saw a pair of double doors at the end of the hall. One was slightly open. Inside was a living room, a grand one, high ceilings, tall windows, white sheets over furniture, dust on the mantel. Family photographs turned slightly toward shadow, and in the corner, beneath a faded cover, stood a piano. Lucy stepped closer. Behind her, Owen's voice cut through the dark. "Don't go in there." She turned. He stood in the hallway, jaw tight, one hand already on the door. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to." "Don't." He closed the door before she could finish. That night, Lucy could not sleep. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was the strange coldness of the house. Or maybe it was the piano behind the closed doors, sitting there like a secret no one had been brave enough to touch. Near midnight, she went downstairs. She told herself she was only looking, but when she found the piano uncovered, her fingers hovered over the keys. Then, very gently, she played. Not loudly, just a soft little melody her grandmother had taught her when she was young. Upstairs, Owen woke at the first note. He sat up in the dark. For a second, he thought he was dreaming. Then the second line of the melody floated through the house, and all the air left his chest. He walked downstairs without turning on the lights. Lucy was sitting at the piano, playing carefully, almost apologetically. Her wet hair from earlier had dried in soft waves around her shoulders. Her face was lit by the faint glow from the hallway. Owen meant to stop her. He meant to remind her of the rules, but he could not move, because that was the song his mother used to play every night before the house went silent. The same song, the same gentle pause before the final notes. Lucy finished and rested her hands in her lap. Only then did she sense him. She turned quickly. "I'm sorry. I know you said not to come in here. Owen reached for the wall. Lucy braced herself for anger. Instead, he turned on the living room light. For the first time in 3 years, the room was no longer dark, and Owen Brooks, the man who had warned her not to make noise, not to bring pets, and not to become his friend, stood silently in the doorway, listening to the echo of a home he thought he had lost forever. Lucy did not try to fix Owen Brooks. That was the strange thing. She did not sit him down and ask him to talk about his feelings. She did not tell him he needed to open up. She did not stare at him with pity, which he would have hated most of all. She simply lived. And somehow, that was much more dangerous. The next morning, Owen came downstairs at exactly 6:30 a.m. and found the kitchen curtains open. Sunlight spilled across the marble counter. A small pot of basil sat beside the sink. A yellow sticky note was attached to the coffee machine. "Coffee is waiting." Owen stared at the note as if it had committed a crime. Lucy appeared behind him in oversized socks, holding a sketchbook against her chest. "Morning. You moved the curtains." "I opened them. They were closed. That's usually how curtains work before someone opens them." He looked at the basil. "And that?" "Basil. I know what it is." "Then why did you ask?" Owen removed the sticky note, folded it once, and set it beside the machine. The next day, there was another note. "Good luck with your meeting." The day after that, "Remember to smile. It confuses people." Owen took that one down too. But he did not throw it away. He slipped it into the drawer beside the spoons, where Lucy found it 2 days later and pretended not to notice. The house began changing in small ways. A vase of cheap grocery store flowers appeared on the dining table. Music played softly while Lucy cleaned. The living room curtains opened for the first time in years, though Owen still avoided the piano. A blanket was placed over the back of the sofa, not folded perfectly, not centered, but warm. At first, Owen corrected everything after she touched it. Then slowly, dangerously, he stopped. He left the flowers where they were. He drank the coffee she made. He even used the mug she had placed on the wrong side of the cabinet. Lucy noticed that too. She only smiled into her cereal. Then came the incident with the banana bread. Owen was upstairs on a conference call when the smoke alarm exploded through the house. He ended the call mid-sentence, grabbed the fire extinguisher from the hallway, and ran downstairs so fast one of his shoes nearly came off. In the kitchen, Lucy stood beneath a cloud of smoke, wearing an apron that said "Kiss the Cook," and holding a blackened loaf pan. Her face was guilty. The bread was worse. Owen raised the extinguisher. "Is something on fire?" Lucy coughed once and lifted the pan. "It's just..." She looked at the ruined bread. A little enthusiastic, Owen stared at her, then at the ceiling, then at the smoke alarm still screaming above them. "Open the windows," he said. "I did." All of them? I panicked and opened the pantry. For one brief second, Owen looked like he might actually laugh. He did not. But the corner of his mouth betrayed him. Lucy pointed at it immediately. That was a smile. It was a medical reaction to smoke. Still counts. A week later, she dragged him into something worse. The neighborhood barbecue. According to Lucy, she had accidentally agreed on Owen's behalf. According to Owen, there was nothing accidental about writing his name on a sign-up sheet beside the words Grill Captain. I did not agree to this, he said, standing in the backyard with a pair of metal tongs in his hand. Lucy handed him a tray of burger patties. The whole street believes in you. I don't even know these people. That's why this is perfect. New friends. He gave her a look. She grinned. Fine. New witnesses. By the end of the afternoon, Mrs. Alvarez from next door had called him sweetheart. Mr. Patel had asked him for landscaping advice, and 3 children had voted his burgers not terrible. Lucy considered that a victory. Owen considered moving. But that night, after everyone left, he stood beside Lucy in the backyard, watering the new plants she had insisted on buying. You know, she said, watching him aim the hose with the seriousness of a surgeon, most people don't water daisies like they're diffusing a bomb. They were expensive. They were $6. Still, she laughed, and this time Owen did not look away. Days became softer after that. They went grocery shopping together because Lucy always forgot the practical things and Owen always forgot the joyful ones. He bought eggs, detergent, and dish soap. She bought cinnamon rolls, sunflowers, and a ridiculous cereal with marshmallows shaped like stars. They ate breakfast across from each other. They cleaned the yard. They argued about whether plants needed names. Lucy named the basil plant Harold. Owen refused to acknowledge Harold's legal status, but he watered him anyway. Then one evening, while Owen was upstairs, Lucy searched the hallway closet for extra towels and found a stack of photo albums. She did not mean to pry, but the top album was open. Inside was a woman with kind eyes sitting at the piano. The same woman appeared in photo after photo, laughing in the garden, holding a birthday cake, standing beside a young Owen, her hand on his shoulder. There were no pictures of his father, not one, only Owen and his mother. And then, suddenly, no more new photos. Lucy was still looking when Owen appeared in the doorway. She closed the album quickly. I'm sorry, I was looking for towels. His face tightened. For a moment, she thought he would shut down again. Instead, he stepped inside and looked at the photograph in her hand. My mother, he said. Lucy nodded gently. She had a beautiful smile. She smiled at everyone. His voice was quiet. Even people who didn't deserve it. He took the album from her, but not angrily. Then he walked toward the living room. Lucy followed. This time, he did not tell her to stay out. He opened the double doors. The room waited in front of them, half restored by sunlight and half trapped in memory. The piano stood in the corner. A framed photograph rested on top of it. Beside the window was an old armchair with faded blue fabric. Owen looked at the chair for a long time. That was hers, he said. Lucy did not speak. She used to sit there every morning with tea. She'd watch the street like something wonderful might happen if she waited long enough. He touched the back of the chair. She used to say a house doesn't have to be big. His throat moved. It just needs someone waiting for you to come home. Lucy's eyes softened. For the first time since she had arrived, Owen was not correcting her, not resisting her, not hiding behind rules. He was remembering. And in that quiet room, beside the piano his mother had loved, Owen Brooks finally told Lucy about the woman who had once made the house feel alive. Owen did not notice the change at first. It happened in small betrayals. A meeting ran late, and instead of staying another hour, he checked his watch 3 times in 10 minutes. A client dinner was offered, and he declined before his assistant finished the sentence. One evening, he caught himself shutting his laptop at 5:42 p.m., even though there were emails unanswered and contracts waiting for review. For 3 years, work had been the safest room in his life. At the office, no one asked why he did not decorate for Christmas. No one asked why he ate at his desk. No one played old songs on a piano and made the past feel close enough to touch. But now, every time the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Owen found himself thinking of the house. Not because it was quiet, because it wasn't. Lucy had filled it with pencil shavings, half-finished sketches, terrible baking experiments, and songs she hummed without realizing she was humming them. She left sticky notes on the refrigerator. She forgot paintbrushes in coffee mugs. She talked to Harold the basil plant as if he were a difficult coworker. And somehow, the house no longer felt like a place Owen returned to, because he owned it. It felt like a place that might notice if he did not come back. That was new, that was terrifying, and worse, he liked it. On Saturday morning, Lucy decided the fence needed painting. Owen pointed out that the fence was already painted. Lucy pointed out that it was painted sad beige, which, according to her, was not a color, but a cry for help. So they stood in the backyard with 2 paint cans, 1 ladder, several brushes, and absolutely no agreement about technique. Owen painted in clean, careful strokes. Lucy painted as if she were trying to cheer up the entire neighborhood. For the first 15 minutes, he corrected her silently. Then she turns too quickly with a loaded brush in her hand. A wide streak of white paint landed directly across his cheek. Lucy froze. Owen slowly lowered his brush. She covered her mouth, but laughter escaped anyway. The man who once treated misplaced mugs like personal attacks now stood in his backyard with paint across his face and sunlight in his hair. For one breath, he looked shocked. Then he dipped his brush into the paint. Lucy backed away. No. Owen stepped forward. Owen, he raised the brush. I said it was an accident. He touched the brush lightly to the tip of her nose. Lucy gasped. Then she laughed so hard she had to grip the fence. The sound broke something open. Owen laughed too. Not politely. Not quietly. Really laughed. It startled them both. The fence took twice as long as it should have. One section was uneven. One post had a handprint on it. By the end, there was paint on Lucy's sleeve, in Owen's hair, and somehow on Harold's pot, though neither of them admitted responsibility. That night, Owen did not correct the crooked brush marks. He left them there. A few days later, the rain came again. Not the sharp, angry storm from Lucy's first night, but a soft summer downpour that arrived while they were unloading groceries from the car. They ran for the porch, laughing, carrying paper bags against their chests. One bag split near the steps. Apples rolled everywhere. Lucy chased one across the wet stone path and nearly slipped. Owen caught her by the waist before she fell. For a second, neither of them moved. Rain beat against the roof above them. Water dripped from Lucy's lashes. Her hands rested against his chest, and his coat was soaked through at the shoulders. She was cold. He could feel it in the slight tremble of her fingers. Without thinking, he shrugged off his jacket and placed it around her. It was too large. It swallowed her. She looked up at him, and the humor faded slowly from her face. There were moments in life that did not announce themselves as important. They simply became quiet enough to hear your own heart. This was one of them. Owen's hand remained lightly at her waist. Lucy did not step away. The house behind them glowed warmly through the windows. The same house that had once stood dark and silent now held grocery bags, wet footprints, fresh flowers, and a badly painted fence in the yard. Owen looked at her like he had been trying not to look at her for weeks. Then he kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost careful, as if he expected happiness to disappear if he held it too tightly. Lucy kissed him back with the same softness, the same fear, the same quiet relief. When they finally parted, the rain was still falling, but neither of them seemed in a hurry to go inside. After that, nothing became official. No grand confession, no dramatic promise, just smaller things. Owen left earlier from work. Lucy saved him the corner piece of every cake, even the burnt ones. He began making coffee for 2. She stopped pretending not to wait for his car in the driveway. The house knew before they did. Then the email came. Lucy was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, sketching a children's book cover between freelance deadlines, when a notification appeared at the top of her screen. "Congratulations, Lucy Harper." Her hand froze. The message was from the École Lumière Illustration Residency in Paris, a program she had applied to months ago, back when she was still packing her life into boxes, back when she believed leaving was the only thing she was good at. She opened it, accepted, full fellowship, 1 year, Paris. the dream she had carried since she was a little girl, drawing towers and bridges in the margins of school notebooks. Lucy read the email 3 times. Then she sat perfectly still. Anyone else would have screamed, called a friend, opened a bottle of cheap champagne, but Lucy looked toward the hallway instead. At the flowers on the table, at the sticky notes still stuck to the refrigerator, at Owen's suit jacket hanging beside her raincoat, at the home she had accidentally started loving. That was when the joy became complicated. She knew Owen well enough now. If she told him, he would not ask her to stay. He would do the noble thing, the kind thing, the selfless thing. He would tell her to go. He would say he was proud of her, help her pack, drive her to the airport, and stand there with that careful expression he wore when something was breaking inside him. And maybe that should have been enough. But the terrible truth was, a small, selfish part of Lucy did not want permission. She wanted to be chosen. She wanted, just once, for someone to be brave enough to say they would miss her too much. The next few days passed like a secret walking behind her. Forms were submitted. A visa appointment was scheduled. The plane ticket was booked. 30 days. That was all. 30 mornings of coffee. 30 evenings of Owen coming home. 30 chances to tell him. And she used none of them. One night, Owen stood in the kitchen attempting pancakes for dinner because Lucy had once said breakfast food tasted better after sunset. He was terrible at it. One pancake folded over itself like a ruined envelope. Another stuck to the pan. A third landed on the floor, where both of them stared at it in silence before laughing. Owen laughed easily now. That was what hurt most. Lucy sat at the table, watching him scrape batter from the spatula, his sleeves rolled up, his face softer than it had been the night she arrived. The email lay printed beside her sketchbook. She touched the corner of the paper, then she folded it once, twice, and slipped it into the drawer beneath the table. Owen turned, holding a plate of misshapen pancakes with quiet pride. Lucy smiled at him. But inside that warm kitchen, while he laughed and the lights glowed and the house breathed around them, a clock had started ticking. 30 days, and Owen had no idea. Owen found out by accident. It happened on a Tuesday morning, when the printer in his office jammed and redirected several documents to the small printer downstairs. He came into the kitchen expecting supplier invoices. Instead, he found Lucy's flight confirmation. Paris. 1 year. Departure date. 9 days away. For a long moment, Owen only stood there, holding the paper in his hand while the coffee machine hummed behind him. Lucy walked in, wearing one of his old sweatshirts, her hair tied up messily, humming under her breath. Then she saw the paper. The song stopped. Neither of them spoke. Owen looked at the date again, as if it might change if he stared long enough. Lucy's eyes filled before she could hide it. "I was going to tell you," she said softly. He nodded. And somehow, that hurt more than anger. He did not ask why she had hidden it. He did not accuse her of lying. He did not beg her to stay. He simply folded the paper once and set it on the counter. "I'll drive you to the airport." Lucy looked down. That was exactly what she had feared, and exactly what she had known he would say. After that, the house began losing her piece by piece. The first day, she moved the plants into boxes. Harold the basil plant sat on the kitchen counter, looking personally betrayed. The next day, the mismatched mugs disappeared from the cabinet. Then the sketches came down from the hallway wall. The little sunflowers vanished from the dining table. The ridiculous cereal with star-shaped marshmallows was gone. The apron that said "Kiss the Cook" was folded and packed away, and one by one, the sticky notes disappeared. No more "Coffee is waiting." No more "Remember to smile." No more silly reminders on the refrigerator. No little drawings taped near the light switches. No crooked hearts stuck to the mirror. Each empty space felt louder than the note that had once been there. Owen kept going to work. He still led meetings and signed contracts. Still reviewed designs for houses that would belong to other people. He spoke when spoken to. Approved budgets. Corrected measurements. Answered emails with professional calm. No one noticed anything had changed. But every evening, he came home on time. Not early, not late. Exactly on time. As if punctuality could hold the days together. Lucy noticed, of course. She noticed everything now, because everything felt like a last time. The last grocery trip. the last breakfast across from him, the last time he silently moved her mug to the correct shelf, then changed his mind and put it back where she had left it. On her final night, Lucy decided to bake. It was supposed to be a farewell cake. It became, very quickly, smoke. The alarm screamed. Owen came downstairs slower this time. No fire extinguisher, no panic, just rolled up sleeves and a tired sadness he could not quite hide. Lucy stood in the kitchen holding a blackened cake pan. Her eyes were wet. Her smile tried very hard to survive. "It's only," she said, her voice breaking a little enthusiastic. Owen looked at the cake, then at her, and for a few seconds, they both laughed. Not because it was funny, because if they did not laugh, they would have to admit what tomorrow meant. The next morning came too quickly. The airport drive was quiet. Rain tapped lightly against the windshield, softer than the storm from the night she arrived. Lucy sat beside him with her hands folded in her lap. Owen kept both hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead. At the drop-off curb, he lifted her suitcase from the trunk. She wanted him to say it. Anything. Stay. Come back. I love you. But Owen only looked at her with the kind of tenderness that made leaving almost impossible. "I'm proud of you," he said. Lucy closed her eyes. Because of course he was. Of course he would make it noble. She hugged him tightly, and for one moment, he held her like a man losing the only warm thing in winter. Then she let go, and walked inside. That night, Owen opened the front door to a silent house. No music, no singing, no smell of cinnamon or burnt sugar, no pencils on the floor, no shoes by the wrong door, no sticky note waiting beside the coffee machine. The clock ticked in the hallway. For 3 years, that sound had been normal. Now it was unbearable. Owen walked into the kitchen without turning on all the lights. He opened the refrigerator for no reason at all, and there it was, a small container. Inside was one last piece of burnt cake. On top of it, Lucy had left a note. "Don't eat this. I know it's terrible." Owen stared at the words until they blurred. Then he took the container out, sat alone at the kitchen table, and ate every bite. It was dry, burnt at the edges, far too sweet in the middle. It was awful. It was perfect. Halfway through, his hand began to shake, then his shoulders, and for the first time since his mother died, Owen Brooks broke down. He cried like a man who had finally understood the truth too late. The thing he had feared was never an empty house. The house had been empty for years. What he feared now was walking through the door and knowing Lucy Harper would never be on the other side of it. And somewhere between the last bite of burnt cake and the first morning without her, Owen realized something that terrified him more than grief. He no longer wanted to survive the silence. He wanted to change it. 1 year later, Lucy Harper came back with one suitcase, one sketchbook, and a heart that had never fully unpacked in Paris. The residency had been everything she once dreamed of. Beautiful studios, cobbled streets, morning light over old windows. Her illustrations had been displayed in a small gallery, her name printed neatly beneath frames that strangers stopped to admire. She should have felt complete. But every time she saw warm light in an apartment window, she thought of Owen's kitchen. Every time someone played piano in a cafe, she thought of the room he had finally opened. And every time she burned toast in her tiny Paris apartment, she cried before she laughed. Now she stood at the end of the same stone walkway where she had first arrived in the rain. The house was still there, but it was not dark. The living room glowed with soft golden light. And upstairs, behind the window of the guest room she had once rented, a lamp was still on. Lucy stopped breathing for a second. She had only come to collect a few old things. At least, that was what she had told herself. She climbed the steps and rang the bell. The door opened. Owen stood there, a little changed. A little older, softer somehow. For a long moment, neither of them said a word. They only looked at each other, as if speaking too soon might break something fragile. Finally, Lucy glanced toward the upstairs window. "Do you have a new tenant?" Owen shook his head. "No." His voice was quiet. "That room only ever had one." Lucy's eyes filled. Owen stepped aside. She walked in, and the house took her breath away. The living room was no longer covered in dust. The piano shone beneath the lamplight. Plants filled the corners. Fresh flowers sat on the dining table. Her old sketches were still framed along the hallway wall. Even Harold the basil plant had survived, though he looked much larger and slightly arrogant. Lucy let out a broken little laugh. "You kept all of it." Owen looked around the room. "No," he said, "I kept learning from it." He led her to the piano. On top of it sat a framed photograph of his mother. Beside it was one of Lucy's drawings, the house, bright and warm, with music spilling from the windows. Owen reached into his pocket. Lucy's breath caught when she saw the key. Not the old guest room key. A new one, simple, silver, tied with a small yellow sticky note. But before she could read it, Owen smiled. "The first night you came here," he said, "I told you 3 rules." Lucy wiped her cheek. "I remember. No noise, no pets, and don't try to be friends with me." A quiet laugh escaped him. "I was wrong." He looked at her with everything he had once been too afraid to say. "That last rule was the best thing that ever happened to me." Then he lowered himself onto one knee. Lucy covered her mouth. "Lucy Harper," he said, his voice unsteady now. "The day you arrived, I thought I was only renting out a room." He held up the key. "But you gave this house a heart again." Tears spilled down her face. "You gave me a reason to come home." He swallowed. "So I'm not asking you to rent the room anymore." He smiled through his own tears. "I'm asking you to stay." Lucy looked at the key, then at him, then at the room that had once been silent and now seemed to be holding its breath. "Forever?" she whispered. Owen nodded. "If you'll have me." "Oh," she laughed through her tears. "Only if—" He looked up, waiting. "If I burn another cake," she said, "you still have to eat it." Owen laughed then, a real laugh, the kind that filled the room. "For the rest of my life." Lucy dropped to her knees in front of him and wrapped her arms around his neck. He held her like he had been waiting 1 full year to breathe. Only then did Lucy look at the sticky note tied to the key. 2 words, written in Owen's careful handwriting. "Welcome home." Later that night, the camera would pull slowly away from the window. Inside, the house glowed. Lucy sat beside Owen at the piano, their shoulders touching, their fingers finding the old melody together. The same song his mother had played, the same song Lucy had played by accident, only now it did not sound like grief, it sounded like a beginning, and the house that had once been cold, silent, and empty was finally full again. Not because someone rented a room, but because someone had stayed long enough to turn it into a home. Sometimes, the loneliest places aren't empty because no one lives there. They're empty because no one feels safe enough to call them home. Owen believed he was renting out a guest room, but what he truly needed wasn't a tenant. It was someone who would leave coffee on the counter, laugh at burnt cakes, play forgotten songs, and remind him that a house only becomes a home when someone is waiting inside. Perhaps that's what love really is. Not finding someone who changes who you are, but finding someone whose ordinary presence quietly changes the way you live. So here's today's question for you. If someone like Lucy walked into your life and slowly brought light back into your home, would you have the courage to tell them to stay before it was too late? If this story warmed your heart or reminded you of someone special, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories about healing, second chances, and the quiet ways love transforms ordinary lives, don't forget to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories and join us for another unforgettable journey in our next story.